Hi, Tanya Roof, meetings together. All right, here we are, Domain C, risk management. How did everybody do this week, honoring your time block? I know I had to push mine. I kept pushing it this week from Tuesday to Wednesday, Wednesday to Thursday. I didn't actually get to it till yesterday. So I'm curious if anybody else had that. I was like, oh, it's just one skill. It's just one skill. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. So, anyways, let's go ahead and jump on in and check out risk management, domain C. So 8 questions from the exam will come from this domain. So only 5% of the exam comes from risk management. So let's go ahead and review. So we read that there's 4 stages of risk management. It's preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. That was that little circle in the book. Now, these are the 4 steps. So 4 steps of risk management. The first step is to identify all the risks. So you want to create a list of all the possible risks associated with that meeting. So what are the vulnerabilities, things like that. And within the step, you're going to want to do your SWOT analysis. So the first 2, strengths and weaknesses, are internal to your organization, and opportunities and threats are external. So that's something you want to keep in mind, which are internal, which are external. So you want to know that. And then the next step is to analyze that risk for each of those factors that you identified. So the analysis phase starts with you examining, your damages, loss, liability, exposure, things like that. And on page 64 of your book, there is a table with some examples for you to check out. So, within this phase, the event professional has 3 choices to make when facing risk. You either accept it, you manage it, or you avoid the risk. And we'll get into that. I believe it's the next slide. And then the third step is crisis planning. This is where you're developing the plan. So the meeting professional has no greater responsibility than ensuring the health and safety of our attendees. So this is always our number one goal with events. So I think that's why so many meetings are being canceled right now because of COVID. It's just so awful with the hotels and staff being furloughed. But the number one reason, or the number one priority, is that we keep our attendees safe. So make sure that you know that. I know that the EIC is updating their exam and coursework for next year. And I have a feeling that Domain C is going to be a lot more than just 5%. And I know it's going to be updated with different areas of risk management. And updated, speaking of, our risk management plan always needs to be a living and breathing document. So you're always wanting to review it. You're always testing it. You're always updating it. I'm sure many planners out there right now have been updating their plans this year for sure. So anyway, elements of the plan. So that is where in the risk management this is where all of your elements of the plan are. And then your event insurance, this is how are you transferring risk and mitigating risk. And then your fourth and final step is the crisis response. So this is when you're implementing the actual plan. In this step, you're developing and implementing your emergency response plan. And we'll go deeper into that in another slide as well. But just make sure you know the 4 steps of risk management and what is included in each of these steps. Oops. Okay, so this is the probability versus consequences. So this is also in your book talking about if something has a low probability and a low consequence, this is when you're going to accept the risk. So you give it a scale on 1 to 5. So low to high numbers. So 1 is a low probability and low consequence. So you're going to accept the risk. Then 3 and 4, if that's the number you give it, this is where you're going to manage and mitigate, transfer the risk, talking about purchasing insurance policies and things like that. This is where most event planners spend their time. So this is kind of where we live in this 3-4 range. And then 5, if you assign it a number value of 5 for probability and consequence, this is when you want to avoid the risk. So some examples for low risk. I think the book says about getting one of your attendees getting hurt at a team building event. The probability of that happening is pretty low. And the consequence, are you going to have to cancel your meeting because Bob fell and sprained his ankle? No. So, the risk and consequence, if those are low, then you're just going to accept that risk. If they're high, hurricane season is, a high, if you're holding an event on the beach, in hurricane season, that's a high risk, high probability that it will rain in hurricane season. The consequence, if you're on the beach and this is where your event is being held, it would ruin your event. So that's going to be a number 5. So that is when you would want to avoid the risk. So that's just a cool little scale. So now we have our emergency response plan. And remember what step this was in? Do you remember? Yes, step 4. So the emergency response plan is in step 4 of the 4 steps of risk management. And your emergency response plan, you want to make sure that it's easy to follow, less than 10 steps to focus on. And again, you want to make sure that all of this is done before the emergency happens. So the worst time to prepare for emergency is in the emergency. So you want to make sure that you have it prepared ahead of time and it's less than 10 steps to make it easy for people to follow. The number 1 thing is to get people out of harm's way. Number 1 priority, number 1 thing. Number 2 is contacting the proper emergency responder. Fire, call a fireman, things like that. So confer with the venue on their plan. So every hotel, every venue has their own emergency response plan. So if you can, no sense in reinventing the wheel, talk with the venue and find out what their plan is. Use multiple lines of communication. So if this were the case of cell phone towers being down, how else are you going to be able to communicate within your group? Walkie-talkies, email, with cell phone towers being down, email, probably not having internet. So using different multiple lines to be able to not only contact emergency response, but to know when to put it into play. That's what the contingency plan, and know at what point do you activate this plan. So your contingency plan would be like if it's snowing and you have, let's say, your meeting is it's the wintertime snowing, you're going to be snowed out. What is our plan B? That's our contingency plan. Plan B. And what point do we activate this plan? When it gets to be 5 inches of snow, 6 inches, 7. So you have to know ahead of time, okay, when are we going to activate plan B? What is our, or the no or no go, kind of like talking with COVID and how everyone was saying for your contingency plan, picking a date, like when is our go, no go date? So that would be part of your emergency response plan. All right, am I going to cancel my February 2021 meeting? If so, what is going to be the deciding factor in that? And what date are we going to make that decision on? So, okay, I'm going down a rabbit hole here about that contingency plan. Types of security. So you want to know the different types of security. And then the difference between the two. So, the contracted security, this is either when you hire from either the hotel hires somebody or the event planner hires someone. They can be undercover. They can also be uniformed. They can have a weapon or not. That is up to, the state, county laws and things like that. Law enforcement, personal. So think bodyguard. So that's your personal security. And then proprietary, which is very similar to contracted. It's, security personnel that you hire, either the venue hires or the organization. And then peer, that's people that are part of the meeting. So your peers, among people that, generally look like you and dress like the meeting attendees? Like, would they be able to fit right in? And they could be undercover or not. And then volunteers were either, or mostly unpaid. But then those are other types of security that you can use. Volunteers. I know some of my groups, they had volunteers to make sure to check badges as people come in for lunch to make sure that, someone off the street's just not coming to their lunch. So knowing the different types of security. And then that's our slide here. Here we go. So this is the CMP International Standards slide. This is basically what they tell you need to study. So here we are. Manage risk management plan. Now, I know we just barely got into it today. The whole thing was 17 pages, I believe. But I basically pulled slides based on what kind of corresponded with the CMP-IS. So identify risks by reviewing current data and event history to address potential risks. Do you think that you fully understand that? Does that really kind of set well with you? This is, talking about the 4 steps of risk management, the probability, consequences, things like that. Doing your SWOT analysis when you're identifying everything. 6.2, apply industry best practices to analyze risk. That was the scale that we did, the probability versus consequences. That's more, I guess, fits with that one than anything. So also doing, I almost said contract, but that's the next line. Develop and manage contract management plan to meet stakeholder expectations and meeting requirements. So that is, mitigating your risk when you're doing your contracts, your cancellation clauses, your force majeures, attrition, indemnification. This is your insurance, things like that. Everything that you can do to mitigate and kind of transfer your risk. So make sure you have a good idea on how you would go about doing that. And then develop and implement emergency response plan to manage resources in emergency situations. So that's knowing all of the elements of a risk management plan. We didn't really get into that, but make sure you know all of the elements of the plan. And then the threats versus capabilities assessments too kind of fall in with that. And then lastly, arranging security according to emergency response plan to reduce impact. And that's knowing the different types and also knowing, what licenses or permits that you might need. Also going along with security, things like that. So again, make sure you're reading through and understanding, and that you would be able to really understand and teach to somebody else what they're talking about. That's really how you know if you've understood something. Okay, so that's it for week 3. So this is our wrap up. So we read skill 6 in the EIC 9th edition, chapters 7 and 8 in the PMM book. Review domain quiz and key terms. So if you're not inside Pathway to Passing, you could go to the EIC website to review the key terms. And then first trimester quiz and crossword puzzle. Now I have it up here, some quizzes on my webpage. So if you are not in Pathway to Passing, you can purchase these quiz packs individually. So here is where you would purchase A, B, and C practice exam. So it's $29. I think all of them are $29. Yeah. And domains A, B, and C have a total of 32 questions that make up A, B, and C on the exam. So that's what this is if you want to click on that and purchase. If not, if you're in Pathway to Passing, it is under the trimester right here, domain C, right here, quiz time. So this is your quiz for first trimester. It's already included in here. And this is your crossword puzzle for some of the glossary terms and things like that. So, all right, let me go back to this. So there's that, and then complete domain review and time block scheduled for next week. So next week is financial management. Wah, wah. Yes, math and formulas. Oh my goodness. So, okay. Just kidding. Positive thoughts, right? Okay, so we have skill 7, which is 17 minutes, skill 8, 26 minutes, skill 9, 10 minutes. And then I have a bunch of formula videos that go into each of the different formulas. So that is going to be about 35 minutes, and then your terms and quiz, and then PMM chapters 5 and 10. So that's it, my friends. All right. Well, have a great week. I hope everybody has a great weekend. And yeah, let's finish up Domain C. If you were like me and kept pushing the time block, but didn't get to it yet, hopefully you'll get to it this weekend. And so we can start next week with Domain D. Ugh. All right. No, just kidding. Good things. Yes. Formula, math. Yay. All right. Have a great day and keep taking those small steps to move yourself forward. Take care. Bye.